after 6 o'clock, which is a very, very great thing. Fortunately, we get to hear from Susie right now because it's high time we had something just to wet the whistle, a little sharpener. What do you have for us today?
Indeed, I've got an Indian Pale Ale from Verdant Brewery called Never Eat Another Man's Applause. Quite a long title.
Well, that's the name of the beer.
That is the name of the beer. It's very hoppy. Citra, Simcoe, Nelson Sauvin, Equinor and Idaho 7, Matt.
Idaho 7?
Yeah.
Idaho 7. It's like half the result. Tottenham 0.
5% though.
5%, okay. That sounds very, very tasty, even if it's got a crazy name. Today's confession comes from Dell. I think PG certificate, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's good. I like those.
Dear Simon and the Sympathetic Symposium. I think that's different.
Yeah.
I'm writing this on behalf of my late father, Steve, and his fellow schoolmates. To say his confession is from a different time is an understatement. It goes all the way back to the 1950s and a newly built British boarding school on the outskirts of Nairobi in Kenya.
Right.
Dad and his classmates were a tough and adventurous bunch of kids, most of whom had grown up on remote farms in the Kenyan outback, where they would encounter all kinds of African wildlife. My dad once had a close call with a hyena, but that is for another time. Okay. When not in class or playing sport, the boys would spend many happy hours on the school grounds looking for interesting sub-Saharan flora and fauna. One of the boys, Mikey, was an animal expert, having acquired a wealth of hands-on knowledge and experience from his zoologist father. He was so at ease with wild animals that he was later cast as the lead in a popular TV series, The Adventures of a Jungle Boy, as a kind of adolescent Tarzan. One of Mikey's specialist subjects was snakes. He knew where to find them, how to avoid the dangerous ones, and how to look after the safe ones. I should say this time, don't feel encouraged to do anything that happens from now on.
Don't try it at home.
The most friendly were common long green snakes, probably a bush snake or a Battersby's green snake. You can look them up.
Okay.
They were very tame, easy to find, and made excellent pets. They were useful at keeping the dorms free of cockroaches and mosquitoes, and like nothing more than sleeping on a warm-blooded human, often comfortably wrapping themselves around limbs and torsos.
Right, okay, I'm definitely not trying this at home. Okay, go on.
Now,
thank you.
every so often the school would get teachers over from the UK to do a stint of work at the school. They were usually fresh out of university, young, eager and excited to be in an exotic land. The boys thought it their job, their duty, in fact, to test the mettle of these sunburnt newcomers to see if they really were prepared for all that equatorial Africa had to offer. So before the new teacher's very first lesson, the call would go out, snakes to class. The boys would retrieve their snakes from various makeshift homes, tuck boxes, gym bags, cardboard boxes, and secrete them comfortably inside their shirts before turning up to class as usual. The snakes dutifully wrapped themselves around the boys' stomachs and fell asleep in the warm space.
Of course.
As the lesson commenced, the boys would be on their very best behaviour, hanging on the teacher's every word. Any nerves the teacher may have had were soon settled. They had never seen such attentive kids. It must be that their strict colonial upbringing or some amazing teaching skills. They were lulled into a sense of security, a very false sense of security. For just at the moment of ultimate classroom serenity, a secret signal would go out. It was time to wake the snakes. With a little tickle under the chin, the serpents began to stir. There before the astonished teacher, bright green snakes emerged from white shirts, their heads bobbing and curious, forked tongues tasting the air. The boys just sat perfectly still while the snakes slithered and squirmed onto the desks, slowly moving towards the front of the class, their beady little eyes locked on the shocked teacher.
This is great.
Now, Father Simon,
Terrifying.
clearly I don't seek forgiveness from the teachers who greeted the snakes with curiosity and good humour. They were the ones who would stick around and enjoy the privilege and adventure of teaching in such beautiful surroundings. But I do seek forgiveness from all of those, and there were many, who turned white, ran out of the classroom, out of the school and onto the first flight back to Blighty, never to be seen again. I'm sure Dad, Mikey and all the other boys have been racked with guilt for these past 70 years or so, maybe not. On their behalf, I turn to the only people qualified to absolve them, Holly, Susie and Matt.
Yes.
Thanks for reading. Hope it makes the grade. Fond regards, Del. Well, thank you, Del, for your fond regards. I mean,
Wow.
that was, for some people, that would have been a very terrifying confession. But I thought that was inventive, creative. Who knew that there were tame snakes that you could have as pets that you'd be quite happy if they slept on your body? This is a shocking thing. Sister Susie, what do you say to Del?
Adele, I can't imagine just being quite happy sitting in class with a snake tucked around, sleeping round a limb. Not for me. I admire the organisation and the teamwork. Very dramatic story there, one for the ages. But if I was that teacher, I'd, be one of the ones that turned white and ran away because snakes. Snakes.
Different times, Matt.
Different times,
Many snakes.
There are quite a lot of snakes. I'm going to say forgiven, though. What do they expect? You're going out to teach in Kenya, there's going to be snakes. And some of them are going to get into the classroom, not necessarily being wrapped around the tummies of your pupils. But, still, should have expected that, shouldn't you, really? So, yes, I'm definitely going to forgive. And, they were harmless, weren't they? They didn't know that.
Yes.
Could have been really venomous snakes. But they didn't know that. And they but they weren't, so it was fine. So for all those reasons, go to
very coherent as ever.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
People's verdict, please. Do you forgive Del? Yes or no? We don't get many snakes in the classroom. 61054. First word is Simon. We had a confession just before the news, which was basically telling the story of a Kenyan boarding school in the 1950s where new teachers were tested by most of the boys releasing harmless snakes from inside their shirts. Some ran away, some stood up to the test. A very stern test, I think. What do we get on the people's verdict?
Not forgiven, says Michaela in Stratford-upon-Avon. No, I can't stand snakes. They're absolutely terrifying. I'm a teacher, and if I saw a whole load of snakes coming out of people's shirts, I'd have run out of that classroom screaming, and I would never go back. John says, forgiven. As Matt said, if you're in Kenya, you probably will stumble across a snake at some point. They should have expected this. And Dom says, forgiven, no harm done. If they were harmless snakes, and they were very attentive students, just a hysterical tale, if you ask me.
Very poor.
Very good.
Thank you very much for the verdicts, of which there were very, very many today, and thank you for the confessions. Send them to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. 5:47 Greatest Hits Radio. If you have a confession, please do send it to its own email address, which is confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. And if it's any good, we read it out, you get a smart speaker. And there goes the drinks trolley. So what are we having as a little sharpener here?
Well, I know Matt likes a gin on a Tuesday.
Sorry about that.
So I thought Heyman's London Dry.
Oh, yes?
Traditional London gin. I would serve it with a lemon peel, though, not just a slice of wedge. Just go on the outside, just get the peel. Would be delicious with tonic. Lovely.
Peel off the lemon. Okay.
You just
what do you do with the rest of the lemon?
Well,
you throw that out.
Have it for a snack.
Oh, my goodness.
Have it for breakfast.
You can use
the
it in
bread
cooking.
lemon, of course.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
Right, okay.
Cleaning. You do lots of things with it.
You could use it to clean your knuckles.
Clean my car, maybe.
Yeah,
anyway,
thing.
yeah.
Today's confession comes from Bob and I suppose it has a PG certificate, something like that. Simon and the Kindly Confessional Collective. When I heard about the confession about the lady in the Waitrose car park, which does seem to have provoked
really
a whole bunch of confessions. Specifically, the effect that the wind had on her latte foam. I was
that
reminded,
one. Yes. Yeah.
So the latte foam flew and landed on an old lady who was asleep in a car.
Who might have been killed by the latte.
That's right. That was his suggestion. That actually a death occurred.
Yes.
That she had died in the car. Anyway.
We didn't know that.
I was reminded of a similar thing that happened to me whilst on holiday in Tenerife, but no deaths. It was the mid-1980s. I was 10 years old and on holiday with my mum, dad and older brother. I have really fond memories of those trips. Dad would hire a car and we'd spend much of our time exploring the sights. There is one memory, however, that still haunts me. One day we returned to the hotel after a morning's sightseeing. It was just after lunch and we set out to relax by the pool. When we got there, it seemed everyone else had the same idea. We managed to find a few free sun loungers, and since we hadn't eaten yet, I was sent to the snack bar to get some chips. This wasn't the first time I'd fetched food, but it was the first time I'd been sent on my own. I queued up patiently, and when I reached the counter, I broke out into my Spanish. 2 plates of chips, por favor, I said.
Right.
Yeah,
very good.
Nice.
Then I noticed something odd. The man ahead of me received his chips on a proper ceramic plate. But the waiter served me, put 2 paper plates on the counter and dished them up there. Because unbeknownst to me, it was their policy not to give children proper plates in case they dropped them.
Of course.
A very sensible rule, but one that would prove problematic. When I picked up the paper plates, they folded like taco shells. I was shedding chips left, right and centre.
Oh, no.
Every time I tried to grip them, the plates buckled. It became clear they'd have to remain flat. I put my left hand level with the countertop and managed to slide 1 plate across with minimal chip loss. A waiter saw I was struggling and came to my aid. He collected a tray from a nearby table. Brilliant, I thought. I said thank you, and I held up my hand expecting him to give me the tray. But he didn't. Instead, he added the tray to the pile of trays behind the counter, picked up the second paper plate of chips with both hands, and placed it in my empty, outstretched hand and walked away. So I have a plate of chips in each of my 2 hands.
Wow.
I left the cafe area and immediately noticed how windy it had become.
Oh, dear.
The paper plates began to flap and flex in the breeze. I decided to take a shorter, different route back to my family, which involved walking along the edge of the swimming pool. The sun loungers were so close to the pool that I had no choice but to walk along the raised edge. As I walked, I began to hurry, trying to shield the chips from the wind. I had my priorities right. A child was sitting on the ledge, blocking my path. Because of the language barrier, he didn't understand my polite request to let me pass. I was getting desperate, so eventually I just shouted, "Move!"
Oh, right.
Wow.
He got up and then cannonballed into the pool.
Oh.
I turned to avoid the splash, and in so doing, the wind caught the plates and blew them from my hands. I instinctively reached up to stop them, but the motion made it look as though I'd thrown them over my shoulder deliberately. There was a scream. I turned around, horrified, to see that my plates had landed on 2 young ladies who were sunbathing topless.
Oh, right.
It was like a scene out of a carry-on film. One of the ladies found it hilarious. Unfortunately, the other one had been on the receiving end of the plate of chips drenched in tomato sauce.
Oh, no.
She did not see the humorous side.
Oh, dear.
She was covered in sauce from there to there.
Yes, there to there.
From navel to forehead. I tried.
There. Right, yes.
Yeah, I tried very hard not to look at the space in between. My mum had seen what happened and came to rescue me. She and the non-saucy lady were having a good laugh as they helped wash the sauce off the other girl's sunglasses.
Sunglasses, good.
And
good.
flip-flops.
Flip-flops, good, yeah.
I was never sent to get chips again.
No.
And so to the wronged ladies of Tenerife, if by some miracle you're hearing this, please accept my long overdue apology. I was 10 and the wind was fierce, but still, I'm truly sorry. I mean, it's a shocking situation. You know, I don't know who's going to be to blame here. Really, it's not his fault, although there were unfortunate consequences. Sister Susie, what do you say?
Yeah, there were unfortunate consequences, wasn't there? I just think, for me, what I'm worried about is why was he... This sounds like quite a dangerous mission. Why was he sent on his own at 10 years old? Where is Dad and his mum and his brother or sister that could have helped him with the matter? And I do feel for him there, and also very close to the edge of the pool. Danger.
Yes,
I'm going to say there. And you know, you were 10. You didn't mean, there was no malice, so I'm going to forgive you.
That is a moment in your life that you're going to remember when you're 10.
Oh yeah.
I would say, Brother Matthew.
I mean, I think we should also, there is someone else who's to blame here, and that is the place selling chips and deciding to serve them on paper plates. That doesn't make any sense at all. You need to use the polystyrene or the paper cone or the polystyrene trays.
Or newspaper.
Newspaper, absolutely, back in the day. So maybe it's down to Carlos with his chips to sort that out. And also these 2 ladies, well, it's very continental. And entirely your decision, obviously. But you do run the risk of being covered in tomato ketchup and chips by a 10-year-old. So for those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Bob? 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the news, we had a confession from Bob, a story from Spain. in the 80s, and he was a 10-year-old boy trying to balance 2 plates of chips as he walked along by the swimming pool. Then a gust of wind came, he lost control, and both plates of saucy chips ended up over 2 women who were sunbathing topless. And the proceedings continued from there. The people's verdict is in.
Forgiven, says Emma in Essex. Hilarious confession. To coin a Matt phrase, it's the system. Why were the chips served on paper plates? Why not polystyrene tubs? Well, that was a disaster waiting to happen. And these poor ladies with ketchup all over them. Patricia in Norfolk, forgiven. I feel sorry for the ladies with the ketchup. They were just minding their business when chips flew all over them. I'd be fuming. That being said, he was very young, and it was the wind's fault.
Blame the wind.
And Gary in Leeds has totally forgiven. Good job, but it didn't happen in Bridlington. Imagine the seagulls swooping down. Absolute chaos.
Yes,
hilarious.
That would be. Thank you very much for all the verdicts. Thank you for the confessions. Please send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's 14 minutes to 6 o'clock. And just ahead of the confession, and time that we had something coming down the trolley here. There we go. A little sharp. Now, what are you suggesting, Suze?
I'm suggesting it was National Margarita Day last Sunday. So if you haven't had a margarita, you should have one. And there's one called Spicy Tommy's Margarita, which basically mixes it all for you. It's got chili in it and agave instead of triple sec. But it's very delicious, and you can lime wedge, chili on the top. Very, very tasty.
Okay, Matt, you can lime wedge if you
I could
fancy.
use that lime wedge I've got.
Lime wedge, chili top.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for the top suggestion. Today's confession comes from Chris. Father Simon, Brother Matt, and sisters Holly and Susie. My confession relates to an unfortunate incident involving a bicycle theft and a police sting operation. I live in London in a flat that is part of a large converted house. At the front is an open-plan garden area where there is a metal structure designed for residents to lock up their bikes.
Oh, yes.
I had been staying at my girlfriend's house for a few days, and upon returning home, I noticed that my bike, which had been securely locked to the metal structure, was no longer there. From the bits of the lock that remained, it was obvious someone had cut the lock and stolen my bike. I was very annoyed, as you would imagine. I reported the theft to the police. They closed my case without investigating it, so I decided to do the detective work myself. I'm never sure if that's a good idea.
Okay.
After a few weeks of searching online, I came across an advert headed, "Rusty Bike for Sale." I checked the picture, and sure enough, there was my bike. I thought it a bit rude describing it this way. I didn't think it was that bad. I messaged the guy selling it and asked him to send me a few more pictures, saying I needed to see if I could fix it myself. I asked for photos of the brakes and lights, as I had replaced these and knew exactly what they looked like. The pictures arrived, and it was quite clearly my bike.
Okay.
I contemplated meeting the seller, taking my bike and then riding off into the sunset, maybe even throwing a few hand signals in behind me for good measure. I decided against this, however, not wanting to get myself into a pickle with some unknown criminal. Always a wise policy, I think.
Yes.
I duly rang the police and explained my predicament. The officer was very helpful and asked me to send in some details about what had happened and enclose any photographs I had of my bike, together with the photos the seller had sent for comparison. This I did, and the officer agreed with me that this was certainly my bike and it had been stolen and was now for sale. They went on to say that they could possibly send someone to accompany me when I went to view the bike, depending on the time and the place. I messaged the seller and we agreed to meet, and I rang the police to advise them of the date and the place. As it happened, there was a football match taking place nearby, and I was told that there would be both uniformed and plainclothes officers in the area, and that providing there was no trouble at the game, a couple of officers could be redeployed to accompany me.
Wow, this is great.
This is great, isn't it? On the day in question, I was advised to ring a number to check the officers were available before setting out. This I did. I was delighted to hear that all was quiet at the football match and that five officers would be meeting me.
5?
Yep.
Wow.
4 of them would be in plain clothes and 1 in uniform. We decided to plan a sting to catch the thief.
Yes.
I gave my description so the officers would recognise me, and was given theirs, and told that 2 plainclothes officers would be waiting on the street near the meeting point, the other 2 in the car park where I'd arranged to meet. It was all very cloak and dagger. I was very excited to be involved in a real-life stakeout. I took the opportunity to tell anybody who would listen about the sting, which is not what you're supposed to do.
No.
gone so well until that point.
Yeah.
As I approached the arranged meeting place, I noticed two men casually leaning against a white van. They looked me up and down, and I checked their appearance to the description I'd previously been given. These were obviously the plainclothes officers. So the sting was on. I waited and waited for the seller to appear. After 10 minutes, the plainclothes officers came running towards me, radios in hand, informing me that they'd got the thief. They've got the thief. They led me round the corner with shouts like, "You're nicked, sunshine." And there he was, this bloke being detained by a uniformed officer, and he had my bike. Plus, he looked like a real wrong-un. The uniformed... you can always tell.
You can.
Can you?
The uniformed officer took me around the corner, explained how the seller had been acting suspiciously, and presented me with my bike. He asked me to confirm it was mine so that they could make a formal arrest, and handed it over. From the moment I looked down at this bike, I knew immediately that it was not mine.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I sheepishly looked at the officer, then back down at the bike. Adrenaline pumping, and a now wrongly detained man waiting round the corner, just like in the Sweeney. I had a decision to make. Do I say it's my bike and let the poor man be arrested? Or do I own up and face the embarrassment of being completely wrong? What if I end up in hot water for wasting police time? My parents would not be happy bailing me out of the police station, especially that they were hundreds of miles away. I think you're probably right there. I decided that however embarrassing it was, I had to face the music and tell the truth. I admitted that sadly this was not my bike. The officers were very understanding and agreed that they were convinced it was mine as well. They also said it was probably best if I made a hasty exit, just in case the seller got a bit cross. Despite my offers to apologise, I left the area and drove away quickly, unseen by the man selling the bike. I messaged him later and apologised, and then blocked his number in case he tried to find me.
Yeah, that works.
So I would like to beg forgiveness from the nice man who's only trying to make a few quid selling this old rusty bike, and the 5 police officers who would probably have preferred to be at the football match rather than helping me out with a failed sting operation for a rusty bike. I've since bought a new bike, insured it, and bought the biggest and strongest lock I could find. And for the thief, the actual thief, if you're listening, I suggest you write in for forgiveness also, mate, and sleep with one eye open, because I am coming for you.
That took a turn.
Yeah,
wow.
He did.
He did.
It's
a bit
Chris's
dark,
real
didn't it?
nature there coming out.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe Chris is part of an illicit gang of himself. Anyway, Sister Susie, what do you say to Chris?
Oh, well, Chris did everything right at the end, right there, and just feel like he did own up. You know, he could have not owned up, and then that would have been really bad. So I do give him some kudos for owning up, but I feel like you could maybe have paid a bit more attention to the fact that what your bike looked like in the pictures, because you asked for more pictures and you were sure just because you owned up and you didn't just walk away, I'm going to forgive you.
Okay, forgiveness from Susie. What do you say, Matthew?
I'm definitely going to forgive it. I mean, it definitely comes under the category of what are the chances. He took all those pictures and it turned out it was a different bike. I mean, come on. Also, oh my goodness, if I'd been in his position and I knew I was going to be in a sink, I would have told everyone. I would have you will not believe what I'm going to be doing this weekend.
The whole point is that it's a secret.
I'm going to be in the Sweeney. So, yes, definitely forgiven. And he bought a lock, didn't he? So everyone learned the lesson. And he's got his... No, he didn't get his bike back.
No, he didn't.
But that doesn't matter.
The thief got away with it.
He got away with it. But sleep with one eye open, Mr. Bike Thief, because he's coming for you.
He's swimming with the fishes.
Oh, yeah.
What?
So for all those reasons, going to forgive.
Well, you never know where these stories are going to go.
No, could be with the fishes, couldn't he?
Okay, so people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Chris? Yes or no? On the text 61054. First word is Simon. However, before the news, a bicycle theft confession from Chris. There was a bicycle theft. He thought he spotted it, and there was a sting with the police officers. Not stinging the police, but there was a sting involving police officers, but it happened to be the wrong bike, and it was an innocent person. And Chris said, nah, I think I'm just going to run away right now. And people's verdict is in. Here we go.
Everyone's forgiving tonight. Georgia in Petworth says, forgiven. I have to say, I'm very impressed with the police response. I love the undercover sting operation and 5 police officers.
Yep.
He came clean in the end, though. David says, you have to forgive the poor guy. He was so certain it was his bike. Maybe the wrong and smelled that something was up and brought a different bike with him for the meet-up. If he looked like a wrong un, he'd probably stolen the bike anyway, so nothing lost.
Right, so he
how it works,
So he
David.
was guilty.
Goodness
Okay.
me. Gary in Lincoln says, forgiven. We had an exact same scenario with a successful outcome. The policeman said he loved it. A chance to do some old-fashioned policing.
Really? So the police love doing this kind of thing. Okay, very good. Chris, thank you very much indeed for your confession. The smart speaker will be yours. And if you have a confession for us, you send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Time for a quick sharpener before we get on with the confession. What have you lined up for us today, Suze?
Well, I've gone non-alcoholic today, and rhubarb and hibiscus kombucha by Counterculture. It's a soda, it's sharp, it's naturally sweet. It's very, very tasty.
Could I have two for Matt? Because he'll definitely like the hibiscus and the rhubarb. It's definitely his favourite kind of thing. Thank you very much. Love a kombucha. Okay, so today's confession comes from Jeff. Dear Father Simon and the Vicar of Dibley Collective, I don't think you've been addressed thusly before.
No, but that's good. I like it.
As a long-time listener, I didn't think I had a confession in me to submit that was broadcastable until yesterday. And this is nothing to do with the Waitrose trolley.
Oh, really? No.
There's nothing to do with
that's
that.
a pity.
So for context, I don't live too far from my elderly mum. But with all the recent torrential rain and flooded roads, what would usually be a 15-minute drive has turned into an epic, diversion-laden trek, peppered with potholes, fjords, and lengthy traffic jams. It was for this reason I decided to let the train take the strain on my day off. The sun was actually trying to remind us what it looked like, and I thought our crazy little 18-month-old black cockapoo called Poppy would enjoy the alternative walk and a day out. That's the plan. So, well, like a well-oiled machine, the child was dropped off at school, lunch was prepared for the wife before her trip to work, and the woof was ready to go in her smart harness. Then, just before we were about to leave, I had a call from my mum. She was a bit distressed due to a mishap first thing that morning. Her dentures had slipped off the side of her sink and fallen down the half-inch gap between the vanity unit and the wall.
Oh, no.
Despite her desperate efforts, she was unable to reach them, so she asked if I could bring something to try and hook them out. Standing in the kitchen, I looked around and spied the thin white extendable rod we used to pull down the blind. Perfect, I thought. That should do it. So Poppy and I set off, her in her dog harness and her new Dayglow yellow rope lead, me with my rucksack and the pole poking out the top as it was a little too big to fit inside. A lovely, unusually dry walk to the station ensued. One stop on the train line, a quick walk to Mum's, and Operation Denture Retrieval went into action. After a bit of prodding and poking, I successfully fished out the rogue false teeth. Afterwards, we had a lovely catch-up and some lunch. The dog had a great run around on the beach, and then it was time to head back home. Now, Father Simon, I've worn glasses almost my entire life, and last year I finally splurged out and bought reactive lenses so that in the sunshine they darken. Very handy, although perhaps a contributing factor to the following. Poppy and I reached the train station, boarded the train, and there we sat in an unusually empty carriage. I let the lead slacken a bit so Poppy could have an overexcited sniff around on the floor. I took off my rucksack and sat it next to me while I looked out of the window with the sun streaming in. A short while later, the conductor appeared and said, "Good afternoon, sir." I started fishing around in my coat for my ticket. "Oh, don't worry about that, sir. If you require any assistance, please let me know." That was a little oddly over-polite, I thought, but well done him. As Poppy had taken a short break from her frantic investigative sniffing and was sitting unusually attentively at my feet, I explained that we were getting off at the next stop and everything was fine, thank you very much. He then said, "Well, if you need any help disembarking, just let me know." And off he went to the door as we approached the station. It was at this point that there was a deafening metaphorical clang in my head as the penny dropped.
Yes.
I realised I was sitting there with dark glasses, a harnessed dog with Dayglow yellow accessories sitting obediently at my feet, and a protruding white stick from my bag, a rather prominent white stick. Oh dear, I thought to myself, words to that effect. That man definitely thinks I'm blind. Unfortunately, I confess, I did not correct his misassumption or congratulate him on his professionalism. I just sat there feeling like a fraud as we pulled into the busy station and we exited by the other door. I'm guessing he must have been pretty impressed as we managed to skillfully weave our way through the crowded platform without bumping into a soul as we made our way to the exit. So clearly I need to ask forgiveness from the very professional train guard for not being what I appeared to be. I should also probably apologise to the lovely veterinary nurse Poppy, who we see regularly and who just happened to be locking up her premises outside the station as we passed by. And she nearly wet herself as I explained that Poppy had just been mistaken for a guide dog. Also to my long-suffering wife for things generally. As she pointed out, I may not be blind, but the verdict is out as to whether I'm going deaf, because I'm certainly dumb.
Right.
Hopefully at least Matt can explain to me how the system is at fault so I can claim at least some forgiveness.
We'll find a way.
Or some dignity, maybe if there is any going. Well, I don't know whether there's any forgiveness. I'm not sure. Obviously, Matt will find something.
Yeah.
Suze, I'm not quite sure what you're going to say here.
No, I don't know what I'm going to say either, Jeff. It's like, you didn't do anything on purpose. Like, you didn't set out to pretend to be blind. It was just a kind of question of circumstance, wasn't it? So I'm finding it very hard to see. You didn't really have a chance to explain what was wrong, and I just feel like a very funny story. I liked it. And you know, you saved your mum's dentures, which was the important thing. So I feel like for doing that, I'm going to forgive you.
I mean, he could have said, no, you've made a mistake. I'm just sitting here with my reactive glasses. But...
maybe he didn't get there quick enough, though.
Okay. Brother Matthew.
Well, I'm definitely going to forgive.
Is it the system?
Well, let's find some way of saying it's the system. As Susie says, you know, he didn't set out to fool anyone. And the train conductor was doing absolutely the right thing. Very professional. Well done to him. And he wouldn't have been carrying that white stick, would he? If the dentures hadn't fallen down the back of the vanity unit. And whose fault was it that they went down the back of the vanity unit?
His mum's.
The system.
Oh.
Because they built the vanity unit, didn't they? With a big gap in it. Who builds a vanity unit with a big gap in it? No one. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Okay. Well, I'm completely lost on that one.
No, fellas. Excellent. Well done.
61054. First word is Simon. Forgiveness or no for Jeff. 61054. Just before the news, however, a confession from Jeff, who found himself on a train. He was wearing dark glasses. His dog was with him, and he had a white stick which he'd used for retrieving his mum's dentures. However, this obviously meant that he was mistaken by the guard as a blind chap and was offered lots of assistance, and he did not admit it. So what do we have?
Again, everyone forgives tonight. John says forgiven. He didn't set out to fool anyone. The train conductor was doing a great job, and he was helping his mum. Everyone forgiven. David in Nottingham, poor chap. He was helping his mother fish out the dentures. You have to forgive that. And Jeff Featherston in Halifax says definitely forgiven. My wife has a guide dog, also called Poppy. She once asked me to look after the dog while she went clothes shopping. The couple who saw me at the bus stop insisted on waiting with me when the bus didn't arrive and guiding me to an alternate bus stop, even though I told them that I could see.
Okay, I suspect there are quite a few stories like this, in which case it's confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. The new podcast will be with you tomorrow.